right? This is the digital evolution of music. It's not a digital transformation. Each one of those instances was a digital transformation that changed your life.
Yeah.
When you stop and look back, you will see the entire length of changes, different milestones of massive changes that have happened. So what I'm saying now, when it goes back to digital literacy, which is one of the key infrastructure issues, is how do we go through that process very quickly? What do we do? What technology do we use to be able to access? Because we're talking about development, right? We're not talking about who Sabi know book best. We're talking about development. Because what you have to understand about the digitalization is that as time goes, the poverty line is going to share coordinates with how digitalized the country is. Do you understand? So that's the problem. So if your country has not gone through the digitalization program, you are going to be a poor country. No matter how you can have oil, you can have all of the resources. Those things will not matter.
You see, I like to talk to people like you. You guys are doing so many things in Nigeria, in Africa. Talking to you guys, at least keep me abreast of what is going on there. So let's start. I know you are busy. See, now the last time you were here, nearly over 2 years ago, then you were working as a senior assistant in the federal government, I believe, working on that act for entrepreneurship. Now, see, help us catch up with you. See, because I know you have done 1, 2, 3 things. Let us catch up with you. In fact, let me show my audience. You are the co-author of In Pursuit, Journeys in African Entrepreneurship. All right.
Correct.
So tell my audience who you are again, so that they can remember and say, hey, this guy. Let's hear what is up to nowadays. Okay. All right.
Okay. So my name is Oswald Osaretin Guobadia. I'm an author, as you've just shown the book, In Pursuit, which has become a great source of joy and pride when people talk about it and people come up to you and reference the book as something they've leaned on, during their ongoing journey of entrepreneurship. And one of the key things in that book is the fact that you're not alone. We're all in it together. Whatever you're experiencing, somebody's already experienced it or somebody's about to experience it. So we must share these stories. And I encourage everybody to write. The book. As you said, I also was recently, well, not recent anymore. It's over a year ago now. Time flies. Working for the last administration for the president as a senior special assistant, basically an advisor on technology. And since then, I have now moved on to starting a firm called DigitA. And we are primarily focused on policy development, advisory work, and execution of those policies, so implementation of those policies. And jokingly, I call myself the Digital Evangelist because I believe in the digitalization of Africa. That Africa has a great opportunity to create value in the world. And this process of digitalization is critical to that. So I find myself being invited to speak on the topic, being invited to contribute to a number of programs that happen across the continent. And I've just jokingly amongst friends, and now it's not so much among friends because I now formally say it that I'm, a digital evangelist, and that's what I kind of do now.
Yeah, good. See, I will tell you this. I struggle to pronounce the digitization. Yes. Ooh, I tried. Okay. So yes. See, most of us don't really understand what that means. Okay.
Yeah.
So please give us the layman's terms. What is digitalization?
Yeah. So that's what's quite interesting about this is a lot of times when people say digitization, they actually mean digitalization.
Yeah. Okay. What is that?
So they're like two terms that are mixed interchangeably.
Okay.
And it gets to a point where you're just like, all right, it doesn't matter. Just call the one you like. You know, digitization is even to say, but digitalization is the one I struggle with.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but the difference is actually this, right? So digitalization is just really turning paper to data.
Okay.
Right?
Good.
So when you digitize something, you basically, you turn from analog to digital, right? So even back in the day when we had our VHSs and stuff, and you want to digitize it,
Yes.
it was you moving it from that form to another.
Yeah.
So that's what, I mean, in the everyday sense now, you think about when you take paper, something written, and you take it to being, documented in a digital space as the digitization process, and it's critical and is a key component to the digitalization program, right?
Okay.
So the digitization is what you do when you go ahead and you document and you move data, you create data, and you store it. Which is important to the whole process. While digitalization is the automation, digital automation, where you now create processes and you take the digitalized data and you use it to improve your workflow. So that's digitalization. So when you start thinking of how a company moves from doing things sort of manual and analog to now being more automated and computerized, that is the ultimate program, which is digitalization.
Okay.
And what we're asking to happen on the continent is both digitization and digitalization.
Yeah.
And my fear is that if we mix them together, we may not we may not do both in the rightful order, right? Because you cannot digitalize without having digitized. And that tends to be some of the problems that we have in some of the ideas of leapfrogging. You want to leapfrog into AI, but you are still
But you don't know the foundation.
You don't have anything, you don't have a data pool. So we have to go through the steps. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. See, I've always imagined, because example, did you go to university in Nigeria?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Well, I went to
I think
all
I'd be a
my
better
schools.
person if I went to my dear Uniben that I was supposed to go to.
Okay. I went to Unilag and Uniben. Okay. Now, if I go to either of those schools and I ask for my results, I may have to wait 1 year because somebody needs to drag themselves up, go to the archives, and well, if only the archives was organized, they will easily find it.
This is a great question. It's a great question.
Okay. See, I've always thought about this.
Yeah.
Now, this makes it easy for everybody to understand what you are doing. Okay.
Yeah.
And how important it is. Because at least every one of us have gone to a school and we struggle to get records from those schools.
Yeah.
Okay. If I go to my secondary school, I will struggle to get my records. The same with my universities.
Yeah.
And in this era, those things should be easy.
Yeah.
If we do what you are saying. So tell us how your work can help us in those spaces.
What's fantastic about this question, and what's funny, but I don't think you even know how fantastic this question is.
I know.
Okay, good. So, what happens there is that in some instances you are digitized.
Okay.
You are not digitalized.
Again,
right?
that confusion is still there for me. But
yeah, no, I'll use the question to clear it up.
Good.
So basically, your reports have been put into a database.
Yes.
But there's no process and workflow that will allow you to access those reports without going to manual. So what happens in Nigeria a lot of times, or Africa in general, in the world sometimes, and we have to fight against this, is that the process gets offloaded back to manual process, right?
Yeah.
So it's quite possible that all your records at Unilag actually sits on a database somewhere.
Yes.
It's not in paper. It may be in paper, so that's another problem. So if it's in paper, it means it needs to be digitized.
Okay.
Right? But if it's already digitized and you still can't access it and you still have to go through a human to get to it, that means there's no workflow and there's no process around that data.
Yeah.
Which means that data, that process has not been digitalized. There's no digitalization.
Mm.
So you are now lacking the process that will get you. So the process, when you log on to some schools and you put in your former student number and they will charge you money because that is a revenue generation process.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you pay that money and all of a sudden, bam, your transcript, your results is all in front of you. That is the result of digitalization.
Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
what tends to happen sometimes is that we digitize, but we don't create a process and we don't create a workflow. And in essence, we lose value because all these schools in Nigeria can ultimately start charging
and make
online,
small money.
Yes, online. In fact, when they check your IP address and see you are coming from abroad, they can charge you more money. We're not charging you money.
They charge US residents and UK residents
Exactly.
extra.
We'll charge you people who are sitting in the abroad and the overseas more money because because it will be big money to you. But ultimately, I think if you pay $30 to get your transcript in Lagos, you'll be very happy because I have heard people who have flown into Nigeria just to get transcripts.
Just to get that, exactly.
Because it's very important. So you probably could give me $100. So we're actually losing revenue because we haven't gone through the process of digitalization.
Mm.
So your question basically gives the essence of the difference, right?
Okay.
It's one thing to take the document and scan it in and you now have it in a server and somebody can sit in a machine and pull up that data. And it's absolutely something else when you now create a process and a workflow that leads to revenue generation for the organization, right? So when you now think of bigger companies are going through different, digital transformation incidents to be able to create better revenue with their core products, right? Yeah. So, today you have done something that's going to make your product more valuable. Tomorrow you do something that makes your product more valuable. These are optimization of processes.
Yeah. That's why when I first saw you transition from what you were doing to a digital evangelist, I said, okay, now we have started. See, for me, because I've been thinking about all this for a long time. See, and if our countries can't do this, then we will stay so behind. Because basically, I believe in the UK now close to 18 years. If I want anything, it's relatively very easy to get. Okay.
Yes.
And the process of digitization and digitalize I'm struggling now.
Yeah.
Now, helps you creating the process to get you those information.
That's correct.
Okay. Now,
process and workflow.
Yeah. So there are definitely benefits.
Yeah.
Okay.
To both parties, because it's actually a value exchange.
Yeah, of course.
To the organization and to the
no benefits will arrive without value exchange. Okay.
That's correct.
So that's done. Now, there are benefits, but are they risks? Okay. So get us through the mindset of all the benefits, okay, that can easily articulate, and any risk that may occur or that any company or enterprise that want to digitalize needs to be aware of.
Yeah. There's something funny about this question. Just the other day, I had a very interesting conversation with myself.
Okay.
I think I got an alert for a password change from one of my workflow, I don't want to name the company name, one of the workflow tools that I use. And I said to myself, I did not request for this password change, right? That means somebody has taken it upon themselves to try to access my account. And, the email came to me and I looked at it, and the only thing you can do with those things, either put it away in a file or delete it.
Yeah.
And after having that thought, the next thought that happened to me was, wow, when I had all my files on my machine, I didn't have this worry, Everything was on my machine. Now all my files are somewhere else. I mean, they're on my machine and also on the cloud.
Yeah.
Right. But because it's now on the cloud, you now have a worry
Yeah.
of things that are far away from you, and if somebody hacks them, they now have access to your information. So that's a risk.
Yes.
Right? What is the benefit of that? I can be sitting in the middle of the ocean and it has happened. And somebody will say, do you have this file? And I will say, yes, I do. And I'll just go to the cloud and I'll pull that file down and I'll send them that file.
Yes.
That is the benefit, and that is the
Benefit.
fact.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So like in any technologies or any technology strategies will tell you, there's always a versus. There's a privacy versus accessibility. There's this risk of hacking versus your own easy access to your own data. These things always happen. You know, you balance it out, you constantly balance, and the idea is to find the right balance. Any product that gets makes the customer happy and the customer finds themselves using has found the right balance between a number of these things. That makes that product worth using. Is there a benefit to using the cloud, a personal cloud? Yes. Is there a benefit using a business cloud? 100%. I remember when COVID happened and the first lockdowns happened, I had a number of clients come to me thanking us because we had just recently started in our company. We kind of moved ourselves into helping customers that we built infrastructure for at DBH to now help them build, their cloud, their workflow and cloud infrastructure. And it just so happened that at that point we did a whole bunch of them just right before COVID.
Wow.
Right? So I now started getting calls from them saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because, the conversation we were having before that was, how do we get the organization to use it? Some of them were very big banks, some of them were very small organizations. There's okay, we moved to this thing, people are not used to it. How do we get them to ensure they save their files to the cloud? How do we make sure that they are messaging not on this one app, but they are messaging on the one that the company has? So we're having different talks on strategy, and that's where we kind of were when COVID happened. And of course, COVID forced everybody to
stay home.
Right? But if they had not done the cutover and the rollover, they would have found themselves in a very bad position. So that's a massive benefit, right? So there's benefits to technology, and there's always going to be risk. It's a question of and there's going to be inconveniences, but it's a question of what's the balance? What is it giving you value for your business? Is it giving you value for your personal life? Is it making things easy? Sometimes people say, this access you are giving to yourself, are you okay with that? I say, what do I have to hide? But I enjoy the benefits of it. There's nothing to hide. So I'm not nobody's looking for me. So I'm happy to put this data there because that's how you also have to think as a company. Certain companies that have very intrinsic data, they create their own infrastructure
security,
to provide the same service. Even myself, when cloud first came out, I built my own cloud. I had a cloud in my house. After a while, it didn't make sense again. The maintenance, the keeping up. I said, I beg, if you use this cloud with iPhone or with Samsung, it's Google. Workflow with Google, co-working spaces with Google. All these things are fantastic when you're trying to write a document with a group of people. You can't provide that on your own cloud in your house. So people go through the process. But yes, there's risk. These risks are known. There are people out there who are just, their business is to get into your property the same way they would have if it was your physical house. The same way they have tried to nick your phone if you're walking in the public, is the same way they try to access where you store your data. So you just have to take all the precautions. And they get smarter and smarter. Just recently I told somebody that the people who are trying to hack, they're beginning to get into an individual design. Like, oh, this guy likes football. I'm going to use football to hack him. You will now get a mail that says, Man U wants to talk to you.
Yes.
That's the level it's at, So you have to be intelligent, but the benefits are worth it.
Oh, yeah. I do agree that the benefits are worth it. Even just the school thing I mentioned earlier, but see, in this era, as a family man who have children, we take a lot of picture, for example. These are things that we cherish.
Yes.
I have thousands and thousands and thousands of my first daughter turned 19 at the end of last month. My second daughter is 17. Okay, so we have loads of pictures from birth to that age, and because they're on the cloud, from time to time, I go there and pull something when you were 3, 4, 5, 7, and I send it to them.
Yep.
Just the opportunity to do those things makes me happy, for one, and
if it was an album,
you get them excited. Those things. I pull videos, I pull pictures. I mean, that's on a personal note, okay.
Yeah.
But the opportunities that it creates for businesses and for entrepreneurship is massive.
Yep.
Now, what extent of digitalization has Africa done? Africa as a group, as a unit, how well have we done when it comes to that?
So we've done okay, but not good enough to give a passing grade. What we have is instances of digital change and transformation. So you would see, look, for instance, using Nigeria as an example, you would see things like BVN, TIN, to some extent NIN, as different, steps and different instances of transformative change using technology, right? BVN has gone a great way to secure banking and helped really by KYC, knowing your customer.
Yeah.
To some extent reduce any kind of fraud from that will arise from identity issues. NIN will do the same thing on a national scale, and they continue to push it, and potentially they can put some resources on it, and it will provide more than just being numeration, just counting people. So there's great opportunities there. And I think another aspect is that the understanding of African governments that this is important, right? So if you go across the continent, like I've said, like my CEO at DigitA will say, when we say Africa, we mean Africa, right?
Okay.
When I first spoke to him, I said, Timmy, this thing we're doing is not just Nigeria. We want to address all of Africa. We want to enter Africa. And in that, as God would have it, we've been blessed with, the last 6 months being in a bunch of African countries where the conversation has been around.
Yeah, you just returned from where? Last week?
I was in Uganda. Yeah,
okay.
Uganda.
Yeah.
And the week prior to that, I was in Sierra Leone, and it just sort of goes from
All
there.
Right.
In Sierra Leone, they're working very heavily right now to create a policy for innovation and entrepreneurship, because they understand that those two go hand in hand.
And you have done a lot of work in that space. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm actually helping them. We're actually involved.
Very good.
So
very good.
DigitA is actually involved in that program. So we're helping them, craft and develop the strategy and the policy document that will guide innovation and entrepreneurship, because we understand that Africa needs to get positioned to move very quickly, so that they understand what's important and what needs to be done. And a number of countries the same way: South Africa, Uganda, which I just came from. They try and take a very strong position in STI policies and also climate technology.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of activity across the continent. And then you look at what the UNDP is doing with Timbuktu, where they're actually creating regional hubs that are also sectorial. So you have a country holding a hub that is just for mining. You have a country holding a hub just for fintech, and the fintech hub is going to be in Nigeria.
Okay.
So Africa in itself understands that the conversation is important, and we understand that we need to take a place in that conversation. And that in itself is one of the most important and first steps. And then we now move into our infrastructure deficit. And when I say infrastructure, that goes beyond just what you may think when you say infrastructure. We're not just talking about connectivity. In some instances, connectivity is not even the issue, right? If you look at the GSMA report, you will see that there's a lot of connectivity available. But what is the issue is access to the connectivity.
Mm.
Access to the connectivity is now you start looking at handsets, the access to handsets, cheap handsets is one issue. But once we start building handsets on the country in the continent, that will help reduce the cost to handsets. What you will find is a lot of people, the majority of people are still on handsets that cannot access the kind of bandwidth that we are building, right? So we have 5G hotspots, we have Wi-Fi, we have 4G, but in Africa we still have 3G and 4G heavily, but the number of handsets that exist are probably more in the 3G and 2G. So they can make phone calls, but they cannot get data.
Yeah.
Some of those phones cannot even go on Wi-Fi. Right? That's where the majority of phones are on the continent.
Okay.
So you not look at handsets to devices to go online. If you don't have laptops, right? What you have, the strongest computer we have now is our phone. So if you don't have the handsets, you can't go online. So you're offline. Then you now start thinking, so that's just access to devices. Then you now start thinking digital literacy. So access to handsets, that speaks to digital inclusion.
Yeah.
Right? Bringing people online, right, is a big part of it. Now, you now look at digital literacy, right? Which speaks to, okay, fine, you've created this factory, Kenea Oz collected $100 million, you've created a factory, you're churning our handsets out. Fantastic devices, right? But digital literacy says, can the people even read? Right? So, and then one of the biggest mistakes that I'm beginning to understand in some of my travel is that the idea of digital literacy is somewhat tied to the majority in the language. So in the Francophone, you're saying, okay, can they read French? In English? No. It's also, can they read Hausa? Can they read Yoruba? And if they cannot read, because we know these languages, but can we read? And most of us can't read our languages. We just know it. If you are fluent in it, doesn't mean you can read it or write it.
Yeah.
So in that instance, if your root language, we're not learning in our language, we fail to teach in our languages. If we're not learning a language, then can you interact with the device in your language? No. In English? No. In French? No. In Portuguese? No. In, and the other languages that was forced on us, you can't use those languages, then you are now digitally illiterate, right? So it now means that all that kinds of thinking must happen. And all that kinds of thinking will be, do we skip the reading process and go to the talking and conversation process? Is that how Africa will use AI?
We can't. Reading is fundamental for progress, because human civilization didn't evolve for a long time until we had the ability to document what one generation did, so that the next generation can access it.
I want to argue, right, and say, because sometimes these processes go and we follow it and we congratulate that process because that process yielded the results that we know of. And what tends to happen is that we don't take account for the other processes that were either derailed by wars or whatever. You see where I'm coming from? So it's not so much reading because people wrote, it's more so interpretation because people also drew. You understand? So not everybody wrote. I mean, writing is actually art, right? So people also drew. So you can actually look at drawings and say, okay, this is what our ancestors did. That was big in Africa. If we are built on that, you probably have found that the African phone today wouldn't have words, it would have pictures. So it sounds more like
we'll talk about that later between me and you.
Over drinks. So there are different ways to look at it. But what I'm now saying, so for instance, I had once again, wow, it looks like I'm talking to myself a lot. I had a conversation with myself this morning because I was listening to something as I walked this morning about AI. And they were complaining about how AI can be misused in education, right? Kids and so forth, using AI to do their work. And I had a thought. I said, okay, these kids are not going to learn certain things. But if they're never going to do it at work, because AI is always going to do it for them, are we then teaching our kids the wrong thing? So this is crazy. I mean, it's not a full thought from me
No,
yet.
no,
I have kids.
we're
Yeah.
on the same part, okay?
Yeah.
Because
So,
I've gone that this way.
So if we are saying that our kids are submitting papers written by AI, right? But when they get to the job, it's AI that's going to write that paper.
Okay.
Is it that we should be upset that they're using AI to write the paper? Or is it that we should be teaching them how to instruct AI to write a better paper? Because when they go into the workforce, AI is what they're going to use to write the paper. So the skill is now the prompting skill.
Okay.
So now this takes us back to digital literacy. Let's go back to where we were.
Okay.
Is it that reading is now less important because, for instance, if you want to apply for a passport, right? Is it that because you couldn't read is why you shouldn't get a passport? Or is it that you couldn't read because you couldn't tell them your name? That's why you're not getting a passport. Should we now just skip that step and go to what is your name? And you will say, my name is Johnson. And you say, okay, where are you from? At the end of the day, the output is that this human being, which is a citizen of the country, is now going to get a passport, which is the exchange of value.
Okay.
So in that situation where that person does not know how to read, we have now used reading as a blocker for that person's advancement. You're now saying this person needs to go and learn to read before they now get the passport. You see what I'm saying? Because so this is what we mean by digital evolution, right? It means that along the way, there are several things that need to happen.
Yeah.
To get to where we are going. And these things are all digital transformation, right? And we need to get innovative along the way based on the problems we have in Africa, not the problems that exist elsewhere. So it may get to a point where we say reading is not important. This is not me advocating for non-reading, or I beg, please.
Yeah, I get you. See,
yeah.
Sorry, I want to say the same.
Yeah.
What you are saying, this is a dialogue, okay?
Yeah.
See, you say something, I listen, I say something back to you, and we exchange information. And at the end of the day, we come to a conclusion.
Correct.
Okay? That's it. Say, go on, please.
Correct. So what I'm saying is that in that point in digital literacy, maybe digital literacy is more so teaching us how to engage computers as opposed to something that may be dying, which is reading. You have to look at what are the outcomes that you're looking for, right? Digital transformation always changes lives. That's what it does.
Yeah.
You know, the classic example, if I give you a digital transformation, I've said it several times, is music. When they had the LP record album, you know, that was digital transformation. My God, music that I just listened to in the auditorium, you know, I can now take it home with me and I can put it in a device and it will give me the music back.
Yeah.
Right? Then they now moved it to 8 tracks. This thing, this big. I pop it in and it plays the music back to me. Ooh, it sounds better. They now have cassette tape. Wow. You know, all these things are digital transformation.
Yeah.
It now went from cassette tape to CDs.
Yeah.
Between Blu-ray, and this thing is getting better, right? And then all of a sudden they give you a little box you can hang on your hip, and they say this thing holds 1,000 songs.
1,000, yeah.
You've got to be kidding me! Now I'm carrying 1,000 songs because I carry the Walkman. The Walkman, you carry one.
Me
Walkman,
too.
and then you have another bag where you put your other CDs that are suiting you in the moment, and all together you have maybe 50 songs. You now get a device that you can put 1,000 songs on. 1,000 songs. Woo! Now we're in a stage where we don't even know who owns the music. I used to have a whole bunch of songs. My songs on my laptop versus the songs from the cloud. I don't know which is mine anymore. Does it even matter if you own music? So if you see that, you see how technology has changed even how you own music.
Yeah.
I don't know what music I own anymore. I used to be a sense of pride when I had my album. I'm going back because of that, because of this digitalization. I've now gone back.
Right there is a CD bag.
There you go.
All this music I had for years.
There you go. But that's what I'm doing now.
I have everything on my laptop. I have them online. So
correct. You have to, because you feel if you stop for a second. I mean, these new kids don't understand it, but those of us who own music, you no longer kind of own music. I don't know where the line stops between the song I burnt and put on my laptop and the one that's in the cloud. But the point is that this is the digital evolution of music.
Yeah.
right? This is the digital evolution of music. It's not a digital transformation. Each one of those instances was a digital transformation that changed your life.
Yeah.
When you stop and look back, you will see the entire length of changes, different milestones of massive changes that have happened. So what I'm saying now, when it goes back to digital literacy, which is one of the key infrastructure issues, is how do we go through that process very quickly? What do we do? What technology do we use to be able to access? Because we're talking about development, right? We're not talking about who Sabi know book best. We're talking about development. Because what you have to understand about the digitalization is that as time goes, the poverty line is going to share coordinates with how digitalized the country is. Do you understand? So that's the problem. So if your country has not gone through the digitalization program, you are going to be a poor country. No matter how you can have oil, you can have all of the resources. Those things will not matter.
See, Oswald, thank God we are talking. See, like you sit down and think. That's what I do. Okay. And when I think about all those things, sometimes I get scared. Okay. Because we are so behind. Okay. But then when I look at the possibilities, I get excited. Right? Now, see, about reading, being able to read or not to read, I will say this. Okay. Now, like I said, we'll talk about it more in depth later. But I believe that literacy is essential for progress.
I agree.
Okay. Literacy is essential for progress. The only thing I ask is this: how can we ensure that in a short space of time, the maximum number of our population are literate?
So here's the thing about that. I like the way you phrased that because it gave me some clarity. Literacy is critical and crucial for progress. But the problem is that we limit literacy to the ability to read as opposed to the true definition, which is exchange of information and comprehension of information. That's where the world is going. So if you're able to go to the middle of Nigeria somewhere to somebody who has never even seen a book, but you're able to exchange information with them about their product and your value in an exchange, then they are now digitally literate. This is far on. This is far on. I think this way is going, as in down the road, it's going to be a case of, people, maybe down the road, by the time me and you would make maybe people will just touch heads. All the knowledge I have about a particular subject is now in your head. All the knowledge you have about a particular subject, you understand. And we now have an understanding that, okay, you have a cow, and you're going to bring me milk, and I know how I'm going to use the milk, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to use the milk for. We've exchanged that information already. Because at the end of the day, a big part of it is about living full lives. So it's how do you get, so this is a fantastic, sometimes things happen for a reason. So I saw a Steve Jobs video this morning. Now Steve Jobs is doing one of his famous standing on stage talking, right? And an engineer comes up and goes, Steve, you're a brilliant guy. And he goes, how come we're not doing the top technology, right? Cutting edge technology. Why is that not what we're doing and putting out there? And Steve Jobs goes, no, it's about the customer journey. You start from what the customer wants, right? And then work your way back to what technology you should give them. It doesn't mean it's going to be the cutting edge technology. It's going to be the technology that solves the problem that the customer has, right? So that kind of applies to what we're talking about, right? So if you say Africa's development, you take that one family, in the middle of Africa, what do they need? What do they do? They are farmers, fine. They need information about farming. They need information about prices. Now, are we going to say that we're not going to get that information to them because they cannot read? Or are we going to find a way to get that information to them regardless? If it means that we fly planes above that is beaming knowledge into their brain by force, or we have somebody above, using PA system and just yelling at them, your farm needs water 2 times a day. So it's almost like if we're talking about, aggressive development programs, we need to look beyond what what has been normal.
Okay.
To figure out how can we hack the process, right?
Okay.
How do we hack the process to ensure that the outcomes, the desired outcomes, is what's met? So it means that we need to challenge things.
Yes, we need to.
Yeah.
We
What
need
will
to.
normally happen is that a development partner will come and say, okay, this village, we need them to know how to use phones. Okay, let's build a school. But that, you say phones, right? Not school. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because that delays our development, because now you are now building. So, by the way, once again, this is not saying don't build schools.
Hey, come on, go on. Come on.
This is not saying don't build schools. Please build schools everywhere. But the point is that when you are thinking about solving a problem, right? Let's get to the problem.
Yeah.
If the problem is that you want this village of farmers to now be able to get information, the approach is not to first build schools. The approach is to first find a way to get that information to them directly. If it means the device you give them just talks to them, that is the first step. If you look at a lot of development programs we've done over the years, you will find that it always starts with the things that are normal and known. Okay, we want this village to become a village that can use their phones to get information from the internet. But they don't know how to read. They can't read English. Oh, okay, first step, let's go and teach them English or get them an interpreter. That's where the project starts. And then the project will fail there because the people adoption rate is low. Because adoption rate is low, therefore we can never get them to using phones. Therefore, ultimately, no, the agri problem is never solved because they never got the information.
Oswald, let me challenge you here.
Please do.
You see, these things we are saying are critical. Okay? Because let's be true to ourselves. We have the massive proportion of our citizens unable to read. Okay? So this thing is very, very crucial. So if we want them to catch up even within African society, okay, the more literate society, we want them to catch up in whatever they are doing, okay, so that we can now bring them on board and we all run together. Okay.
Yeah.
We need to find the best way to help them catch up.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Now, I believe, and I will assume you agree that entrepreneurship is the way.
Yeah.
Okay. So see, we need to encourage our young people to start developing product services to alleviate the worries, the problems of our population. Okay, so yes, external partners are good. Okay, but for me, see, I believe that local entrepreneurs who understand the local problems are the best people to handle those problems. Now, how can we encourage our young people, which we have in abundance? In abundance.
What are our fair share?
Okay, to stop looking at Facebook and comment on Facebook all day long and start going around their community and looking at the problems and asking themselves, how can I solve this?
So that problem sits in some of the things we've already discussed, right? Infrastructure, literacy, inclusion. And then I guess what we can bring in now is what you described about solving local problems. That's what they call market creating innovation.
Okay.
Right. So market creating innovation, and in a book, Prosperity Paradox, talks about.
Right here.
I
Right
know,
here.
I
See?
know you sabi read better
Right.
book.
See. Right
Yeah,
here.
right your
Right
table,
here.
right your table,
You see?
right your
I,
table.
I
But I
haven't
can't
read
see.
it. I haven't read it, but I bought it. So
No, you have to read it. You
oh,
have to read it.
I know. That's why I have it.
Yeah, it talks about different kinds of innovation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so market creating innovation is what we need.
Yeah.
What is fantastic about innovation in Africa is that it's quite possible that in Africa you create a problem. Sorry, you solve a problem.
Yes, a solution.
You solve a Yeah, you have a solution that may ultimately solve other problems globally, right?
Yeah.
It already happened before where you have I think this was even traffic. They had a solution that solved traffic problems somewhere, and that same mental approach was used to address how cancer can be approached. So
Okay.
those kind of jumps,
Yeah.
those kind of jumps in solution across different problem sets happens. So Africa has unique problems that can be solved with digital solutions. We have very young people, as you just mentioned. And we have a massive population to test those ideas on. So that is a sort of a blessing. Now, what really helps this and brings it together is something I call, market creating policies, right? This is why, a lot of governments are now focusing on, startup acts, are now focused on innovation policies, because this is what creates the enabling environment for young people to develop their ideas.
Yeah.
Right? That's what's important, right? It's one thing to have an idea, it's another thing for that idea to thrive. Doing business on the continent is very difficult.
Yeah.
So you have to have the right policies. There's no business, there's no industry that has survived globally that has not been supported by the right policies and regulatory framework.
Yeah.
So that's why I found that as a focus. That's why you see me now. I'm up and about talking about policy and trying to help people develop the right policy. But the right policy and the right regulatory framework is what allows business to thrive in an environment. And once we have that in place, that would help grow, local entities who are solving local problems in their local environment. You know that Japan thing happens in multiple stages.
Yes.
First you leave your village, then you leave your city, then you go to Lagos, then you leave Lagos, then you're in Canada. And there's destruction all along the way, because innovation should be able to happen at your village. It's at your village you are solving that local problem on water distribution. Now you have, and then it's in your city that you are doing that. But if you're all sitting in Lagos and overcrowded Lagos, then the problems you can't be fixing, a problem in a rural
in a
area.
community that you are not in.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, you can be smart and be able to dent it, but you're going to have a problem scaling. So I think that, Nigeria is very unique and diverse at the same time, that you need to have startups all over the country that are solving very local problems, and they'll grow. And at the end of the day, it will be survival of the fittest, but it has to start first.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Man, see, this discussion has gone way beyond what I was thinking. But hey, I'm happy. I'm very, very happy.
There you go.
Yeah. DigitA has provided a comprehensive white paper. Okay.
That's correct.
It's called Beyond Transformation Towards Digital Evolution, a Quadrant of Disruptive Synergy. Okay.
Correct.
So give us a brief overview of that paper. What does it contain, and where do you think it can go?
So that's great. So I mean, the white paper we released last October, and it's white paper. I mean, I have people run up to me and say, they run a tech department in the company, or they work for a minister, and they come up and say, "Wow, thank you for that document." They've read it and they see it's giving them some kind of perspective. Which is the reason why we wrote it, right? So like you said, when you met me last time, I was with working for the president, and prior to that, I was an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur in this country, in Nigeria, for close to 2 decades. Worked for the president for about 34 months.
Okay.
And it's given me, giving myself a sort of an interesting view and perspective on how the environment operates.
Yeah.
So we wrote this white paper, and the white paper gives historical context. I've already explained what digital evolution is, right? So
Yes.
what we hear in the world, people keep on saying, oh, digital transformation, digital transformation. And what that led me to understand, because when you work in the public sector, you're now thinking from a different perspective. So you take your entrepreneurial mindset, but you now shift into a development mindset. How do you develop the country? Becomes the question that you're asking. And development process takes a different process. It has you looking at things a bit differently, because you're looking at how do you do change, and how do you do change over time, and what are the potential it's not even revenue. As a private sector person, you're thinking revenue, but what are the impacts to the human beings that are within your within that space? And that sort of led us to start thinking that digital transformation happens, but the question is, which digital transformation are you in? Right? Is Nigeria in the same digital transformation as Estonia? No.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Is Nigeria in the same digital transformation as the UK? No, we're not. So we're in a different place in our developmental path. We're all in developmental path. We're all running different races. So we cannot all be saying digital transformation. It becomes bastardized, right? So countries need to look at it as a digital evolution and then peg where they are in that entire journey. So that's why we said beyond transformation towards digital evolution. In a sense that, where are you in that journey? Have you added public sector resources to your enumeration, to your numbering of your people, as you're giving your people numbers? In America, if you have a social security number, you have access to certain things.
Yeah.
In Nigeria, you have an NIN, it's just a number for now.
Yeah.
In fact, NIN is even used as a gate. Use it to get passports, and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So every country on the continent are in different stages. And what's interesting, this doesn't just apply to countries, it also applies to companies.
Yeah.
Where are you in your digital transformation and your strategy, right? You are not in the same place as another company on purpose,
Yeah.
right? So you have to look at it as an entire journey, right? You run into a company today and the doctor's office. Okay, today, what are you doing? Telemedicine. Down the road, what do you want to be able to do? Oh, you want to be able to do surgeries remote. That is a journey. And all the aspects that, as I explained with music, that gets you there are all digital transformation activities that will get you to a digital evolution. So that's what the paper says in essence. And what it does is that it uses Nigeria in focus, and it gives you the historical and some of the things that happen in Nigeria as far as Nigeria is concerned, the digital revolution, and kind of pegs it and says, this is where we are, and this is why we're here. We even went as far back as talking about colonial times and the use of paper and how that leads to the public sector. The public sector rules actually leans towards paper. There's a reason why they are files, right? So can you digitally transform a government if you haven't looked at the policy and the work policies around paper, right? You can't. You need to address the policies around work to be able to address the technology because I'll tell you what happens right now from my experience. In government, many digitalization processes get offloaded back to paper. So that's why when you go to your school and say, can I get my transcript or this, they can't send it to you via email. They'll print it for you.
Yeah.
Because it has been digitized, but it has not been digitalized, and it has been offloaded back to paper. That's why when you go apply for a passport, they give you paper. You understand?
Well,
so this happens. This happens.
The passport has done a lot of things in the last few months. That's
100% correct.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so shocked because and my family, we did that over a year ago now, and it took months. Okay, but in the last few months, I've seen people who applied, went to the embassy for their thumbprints, and they got the passport the next day.
Yes.
Wow.
And you know why? See, so earlier on we talked about if you digitize something but don't digitalize it, it may be an issue. So what's interesting about our situation is that sometimes it's both digitized and digitalized, but yet it's still an issue.
Yeah.
Because the workflow process, as in the human beings, right? So in this document, we talk about something called 3PTS, right? The T3PS.
Yeah.
The T stands for technology, but the P stands for people, process, and policy. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Because we felt these are areas that you must touch to truly change.
Yes.
Right? If you don't look at the people, if you don't look at the policies, and if you don't look at the process, and if you don't look at the technology all in one time, you will have issues. So for instance, this passport thing, it was both digitized, it was also digitalized, but it had issues because the people still did things manually.
Yeah. Well, I'll just
those are the things you have to look at.
Yes, I was just about to say that your white paper, I'll put the link in the when I post this so that people can access it and read it. I've scanned it. I see I have problem with reading, but I've scanned it as much as possible, and I know it's very, very comprehensive.
If we give an approach, we give a sense of an approach on how you can do your digitalization program, what you should be looking at, giving a historical. So we use Nigeria as an example, giving the historicals, telling you what different agencies have done, the siloed incidents of digital transformation that have happened in different agencies. But ultimately, what needs to happen is a centralization activity where all these things are interconnected, so that we truly get the benefits of.
Very good, very good. Just like you mentioned just now, the process boils down to people, processes, and policies. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, one of the major issues I believe we have with various policies is the implementation. Okay. Many of us lack the patience to follow processes and procedures. So I assume, like you said, that something has to be done to encourage people involved to follow processes. Okay, so what can we do in that space? Because even though everything is digitalized and people still go back to paper, right? If the processes are not connected, if workflow is not robust, what can we do for people to follow the process?
So yeah, you rightly said. I mean, the first problem is that if it's not implemented, we have a lot of good policies that just sit on a shelf somewhere. The policy is kind of a general term, right? So you have policy, which is a policy statement, which sort of says what government intends to do.
Yeah.
You have regulation, which says what you are not going to do, which protects, is a more of a protection mechanism. And then you have the law, which is legislation, right? So we have policy statements that have been made by government and previous governments. We have regulation that's on the books, and we have laws that sometimes are not looked at, are not respected, are not, adhered to. And then ultimately what needs to happen is more so the enforcement. Implementation 1, enforcement 2, right? So we have laws and policy statements and regulations that are not implemented, right? And then we also have those that are not enforced.
Yeah.
But more importantly, one of the things that I'm telling entrepreneurs now is that when you decide you're going to do a business, it is important that you understand the policy and regulatory framework that covers the business that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
That's the very first step.
Yeah.
The next step is, how do you influence it to ensure that it's forward-thinking and progressive, to ensure that the business you're trying to do is successful? You cannot operate in the absence of it. It's gonna hamper you. It'll catch you in the front. The regulatory framework that you don't participate in the beginning to help structure, in the front, it will catch you. And then you say, government is trying to destroy my business, but you're not engaged. You're not participating in the process to create the right enabling environment for your business. So I think one of the key things that will help this thing you are saying is, if when we all engage, collaboration and engagement, when we all engage into policy. I want to do edu-tech or health tech, and day one, as I'm doing my business plan, I'm also saying, what is the policy that guides this space? I'm also having conversation about that. I write an article about my business, one paragraph in there covers policy, because I understand that it's important, right? I do a podcast talking about, oh yes, we're going to create a fintech that is going to change water to wine. In that conversation, I'm going to talk about wine policy and policy and water policy,
yeah,
and regulation that guides wine and water, because that turning water to wine there's going to be a regulation about wine that prevents water to turn into wine. That's gonna be shocked. Like, I cannot do my business. You know?
Yeah.
So how do we influence it? What do you know? First, entrepreneurs understand the policies and regulatory framework that guides your business. It's important.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's a working, we're working towards it. But then, like you said, anyone who is doing anything in a particular space need to get involved.
Yes.
Okay. You all need to get involved. Now,
yes.
On that note, I've seen a few posts you made on LinkedIn in recent weeks about collaborative engagements that will lead to development of market creating policies. Now, what is that?
So what tends to happen is that, if private sector and public sector don't engage, we have issues. What you have to understand is that a lot of things you see in our environment that you don't like is basically because, there's a lack of collaboration in the public sector, which exhibits itself as a lack of coordination.
Okay.
Right? So when you're a citizen and you're looking at government, you say, why is this happening? Why is that happening? It seems uncoordinated. That's because there's a lack of collaboration. Right? There's a lack of collaboration in the private sector. Sector players themselves are not engaging each other. You understand? So that leads to a lack of loss in value, potential value, right? Because if they engage each other, new ideas will be birthed, new ways to approach government will be born, and ultimately the value will be expanded and the pie is bigger. Now, where it gets really disruptive is that there's a lack of collaboration between private sector and public sector.
Yeah.
With that, we will never reach our full potentials.
Yep.
Right? So what you've been hearing me preach is the fact that we need to ensure that policy processes are done through a collaborative engagement model, that both parties are at the table discussing how to get this done. What is the why? Why are we doing this policy? Okay, we have discussed the why. The why is common to both of us. We both agree. This is why government wants it. This is what private sector wants it. We merged our whys. Now we have a commonality in our why. It now becomes, how do we get this done?
Yeah.
And then after we figure out how we're going to get it done, the what now starts to give birth.
Yeah.
What are the items? What are the things? So what tends to happen sometimes now is that a policymaker will just decide that this thing is technology, is growing, let's create a regulation for it.
Okay.
And next you know, the private sector person will now yell, oh my God, what are they doing? That doesn't make any sense. Da, 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 da. And by the way, you agency X, you are creating a regulatory framework for it. But guess what? Agency Y has created a policy that counteracts your position. We hear this all the time. The truth of the matter, all that is happening is that there's a lack of collaboration in the public sector. It shows itself as a lack of coordination. There's a lack of, ultimately in the end, there's a lack of collaboration between both, which ends up not having a consolidated why on why we need this policy and regulation.
Wow.
So, that's why we're talking about it, because the solution is quite easy. And it's actually the cross. It's actually the key point, the key starting point to getting to the place we need to be, where we take our position. If we take the similar approach where, I'm a startup, I don't need government, it's just me. You get to a point where you need government.
Okay, see, on this particular point, right? I have a good friend in my classmate in secondary school and university who worked for NTN and Globe as an executive, and he has his private firm now, which he runs. This issue is one of the major issues we talk about. Okay, see, I will, if you will permit me, I will connect you with him so that you guys can sit down and talk about these things and maybe be able to do something. At least you understand his issues and you can also educate him in some of those things. And yeah, I think it's essential that these things are done in a collaborative manner to yield results. Yeah. Oswald, man, I'm so happy for this conversation. The way it has gone, it's a lot more than the way I thought it would be. Okay, so let me ask you. Let me ask you the last question. Okay. Now, these things are, you are working on these things, and I'm sure other people in other countries, like you said before, are also working on it. So, how do you see this work going down in the next few decades?
So I think that you know, it's like a pitch. You know, everybody has a role to play. So I think, like I said earlier, the recognition of how important this is has dawned on a lot of our governments.
Yeah.
And as the governments get younger, you know, people are understanding the importance of this. I mean, if you look across Africa, you see a number of very young ministers who, maybe I shouldn't say very young, because I mean, they're young. You know,
yes. Yeah.
Nigeria has a young minister. You know, relatively speaking, he's a young man. Sierra Leone has a young minister. Algeria, a few other countries, Rwanda, and this is all for technology ministers, right? So it's only going to get better. I'm not saying youth and age is the key marker. I'm just saying that these are some examples of what's happening as they see that it's important.
Yeah.
They're finding the people who understand, because in Nigeria we have history of having had people long time ago that have no connection to technology, and because minister is a
running
title,
things like this. Yes.
Exactly. They were just adorned it. But now we have people who are professionals who understand. I mean, the last two ministers, the previous minister and the current minister, were both people who were professionals from technology, right? One was academia, and the current one is also from the ecosystem. So that gives you an indication of that it's dawned that this is important.
Yeah.
Right. So what's now remaining is the execution path. And that's why we wrote the white paper. The white paper kind of shows you what the problem is and kind of gives you a suggestion on this is some of the things you should be thinking about as you develop your STI policy, as you develop your digital economy policy, as you execute it, right? And Africa does not suffer from a lack of policies or documentation or knowing what we have to do. What's important is the actual execution.
Yeah.
So that's where we need to start investing time and resources and getting them to ensure that people understand how to program manage, because this is a program, how to program manage, how to start it, how to get into the middle, how to get it to the end is actually what's important to get us where we need to. I mean, I said it earlier, end of the day, the judgment to say, have we done this right, is when we look at the poverty line down the road, right? The poverty line is not going to be determined by too many things too far away from the fact how digitized or digitalization program has happened in your country.
Yeah.
Because that's how ultimately, a wealth of the country be defined. Where are you in this space? Just think about down the road when all this goes into the metaverses and the AIs. Where are you? Where are your data? Is your village data on AI? If it's not, then who are you? When we say identity is very important. So these are the things we have to think about. What's the infrastructure we need to put in place now? There are certain activities that are happening, for instance, in Nigeria, with this massive fiber project we're about to do. That is key to ensure we have the right infrastructure in place. Then you now start thinking, where are we on data centers? Right? We cannot outsource our data center platform to everybody else. We have to.
It's a security issue. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really about going down these steps, ensuring that we have the right infrastructure on the continent. There are a number of fibers that come into Africa. There are a number of intercontinental fiber that's happening. So it's really about getting infrastructure in place and also looking at digital literacy, looking at digital inclusion. They now start looking at emerging tech to see how we place ourselves in emerging tech. How do we start emerging tech now? What do we use emerging tech for today? That speaks to the digital literacy problem I was talking about earlier. Do we use AI to make sure that we get to a point where we're able to go through the process faster? As in, somebody needs a passport from government. Because they can't read doesn't mean they shouldn't get a passport.
Yeah.
We've solved that problem by making a conversation. What's your name? Where were you born? What's your local government area? That's what's important, right? If we peg it behind things like, can you read? Then we will never get there, because now we have to teach them how to read first.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think that Africa is positioned in an amazing place, considering the fact that we have very, very young people. It becomes a case of, how do we use these young people? How do we equip them? How do we provide the right policies to enable them? How do we provide the right tools? How do we provide the right education? Right? It's one thing to have a large population. It's another thing to have a large, functional and youthful and impactful population. And that's what we should be leaning towards. So what are those policies? What are those programs we need to manage to get that into place?
Wow. Oswald, man, this has been a wonderful discussion. Thank you very much for being a great guest of the Think Big for Africa podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
We must think big for Africa.
Yes.
Think big for Africa and execute massively for Africa.
That's it. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.